Kings die and beggars die. They are all going to death. And yet this tremendous clinging on to life exists. Somehow, we do not know why. We cling to life, we cannot give it up, and this is Maya. So death, almost all of us are afraid of it. But when one embraces sannyasa, he performs his last rites. Love of death. Swamiji, what Swamiji taught us, it is love of death. And it is not new. First, we have to know what we really are. What is the real nature of our? If we can know somehow what is our real nature, then this tremendous fear of death will go. One can transcend this fear of death. In Upanishad it says, Atmanam chet vijaniyat. If someone comes to know what is the self, and this is me, and this is not me, I am asmiti purushaha, kimichan kasya kamaya. Then what is the desire? What is for that we cling to our life? He understands that. It's a vanity, it's a pride that we want to cling to. So this is kimichan kasya kamaya shariram anusanjarat. It's like a jwara, it is like fever. Why should one cling to this fever of life? Upanishad is very bold. So this is the context when a sannyasin die, that means he leaves this body. We don't cry, we don't wail, because one reaches one's goal. So this is the context. Here we are not gathered here to wail or weep or something like that. It is a fortune that he joined with a great stalwart like Swami Asheshanandji Maharaj, a direct disciple of Swami Sri Sharda Devi, Holy Mother. So he had a great fortune, and he imbibed some qualities that we are here to remember. He also contributed a great deal. His prime portion of his life was spent here. And there are maybe humanly ups and downs, but we are to leave those, what we can understand, what we can learn from his character, that we can inculcate, we can contemplate. So this is what we have gathered for. And so that program is set. People will come one by one, and then they present their presentation. So with this, now next one can go.
The reading from Katha Upanishad. So, this is one of the 10 Upanishads, famous Upanishads. So before I read, I will just give you few important points in this Upanishad. It's a very interesting Upanishad and it has got a beautiful story. There are few characters. One is father and son, and then god of death, we call Yama. The father's name is Vajasravasa, a bit difficult to pronounce. So Vajasravasa means, actually it has got some beautiful etymology in Sanskrit term. So Vajasravasa means one who has lots of wealth to give away. So the father has, the character itself is like lots of wealth to give away. And his son is Nachiketa. Nachiketa means etymologically non-decay. The father has got lots of wealth to give away and his son is non-decay. And he donates his son to the god of death. And in these Upanishads, it is divided into various sections. It has got 6 sections. And that section is called as Valli in Sanskrit. Here, Valli means medicinal plant. So, non-decay is our true nature. We are meeting the god of death and we are crossing from one section to another section. And these sections are like a medicinal plant which will cure our mistaken identity of decayness. We are actually non-decay, but we mistakenly see that we are decaying with this medicinal herbs, which is called Valli, which will take us towards our true nature, which is not non-decay. So this is the gist of this Upanishad. So this fellow, this boy, meets the god of death. And there is a conversation between god of death and this non-decay. So god of death is who will make things to decay, but he is non-decay by true nature. He is boldly meeting this person, god of death, and there is a conversation between them. So I'm just going to read only the philosophical part of this. So which starts from the second Valli, or we say medicinal section of this Upanishad. So there are very interesting statements made by the god of death to this boy. The good and the pleasant approach man. The wise examines both and discriminates between them. The wise prefers the good to the pleasant, but the foolish man chooses the pleasant through love of bodily pleasures. Fools dwelling in ignorance, yet imagining themselves wise and learned, go round and round in crooked way, like the blind led by the blind. He about whom many are not even able to hear, whom many cannot comprehend. Even after hearing, wonderful is the teacher, wonderful is he who can receive when taught by an able teacher. So many statements might look very obscure, weird. That is why we refer to commentators to understand exactly what these are, explaining to us. So please don't worry, just hear the statements, the facts of life. Nachiketa, there is boy is answering. So it's a dialogue between the Yama, the god of death, and this boy, Nachiketa. It's non-decay. Nachiketa said, that which thou seest, which is neither virtue nor vice, neither cause nor effect, neither past nor future, but beyond these, tell me that. Yama replied, that goal which all the Vedas glorify, which all austerities proclaim, desiring which people practice brahmacharya, a life of continence and service. That goal I tell thee briefly, it is Om. So I will just, I'm quoting Sanskrit, Na jayate mriyate va vipaschit, na ayam kutaschit, na babuva kaschit, ajo nityah shashvatoyam purano, na hanyate anyamane sharire. This self is never born, nor does it die. It does not spring from anything, nor did anything spring from it. This ancient one is unborn, eternal, and everlasting. It is not slain, even though the body is slain. Anoraniyan magato mahiyan atmasya janto nihito guhayam tamakratu pashyati vitashoko dhatu prasadan mahimana atmanah. The self is subtler than the subtle, the greater than the great. It dwells in the heart of each living being. He who is free from desire and free from grief, with mind and senses tranquil, holds the glory of the Atman. Nayamatma pravachanena labhyo na medaya na bahuna srutena yam eva yesha virunite tena labhyah tasyaisha atma vibrunite tanuswam. This self cannot be attained by the study of the scriptures, nor by intellectual perception, nor by frequent hearing of it. He whom the self chooses, by him alone is it attained. To him, the self reveals its true nature. Atmanam ratinam viddhi, shariram ratam evatu, buddhim tu saratim viddhi, mana pragraham evacha, indriyani ayan ahur, vishayan Vishayanteshu gocharan atmendriya mano yuktam bhokte tyahur manishinah. Know the Atman as the Lord of the chariot and the body as the chariot. Know also the intellect to be the driver and the mind the reins. Uttishtata jagrata prapya varan nibodata Surakshadhara Nishita Duratyaya Durgam Patat Tat Kavayo Vadanti. Arise awake, having reached the great ones. Gain understanding. The path is as sharp as razor, impassable and difficult to travel. So the wise declare. By mind alone, this is to be realized. There is no difference whatever between visible and invisible. He who sees difference here between these goes from death to death. Purusha, self, of the size of a thumb, resides in the middle of the body as the Lord of the past and the future. He who knows him fears no more. This verily is that. There is one ruler, the self of all living beings, who makes the one form manifold. The wise who perceives him seated within their self, to them belongs eternal bliss, not to others. Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman tam atmastam yenu pashyanti dhirah tesham shantihi shashvati netaresham. Eternal among the changing, consciousness of the conscious, who, though one, fulfills the desires of many, the wise who received him seated within their, who perceive him seated within their self, to them belongs eternal peace, not to others. The sun does not shine there, nor the moon, nor the stars, nor do these lightnings shine there, much less this fire. When he shines, everything shines after him. By his light, all is lighted. Angushta matraha purushontar atma sada jananam hridaye sannivishtaha tam swat sharirat pravurhet munchat iva ishikam dhairyena tam vidya shukram amritam tam vidya shukram amritam iti. The Purusha, the inner self of the size of a thumb, is ever seated in the heart of all living beings. With perseverance, man should draw him out from his body, as one draws the inner stalk from a blade of grass. One should know him as pure and deathless, as pure and deathless. Om Tat Sat Om.
Just now we have heard Angushta Matra Purusham Sada Jananam Hridaya Avasthita. So within us there is something which is residing, which is immortal. And that same Purusha experiences this world. And it experiences in various ways. It sees something, hears something, tastes something, touches something, and smells something. So Arjuna faced this problem. You see, one dies. This is natural death, nothing to say about anything. But Arjuna faced a tremendous challenge. He was standing between two armies, and he saw he had to kill his own near and dear one. He has to kill his gurus, his grandsire, his own relatives. How it is possible? So he was depressed. Then Sri Krishna came to his rescue when he surrendered himself to Sri Krishna. Shishasteham shadhimam tvam prapannam. So he said, I'm your disciple, please guide me. I cannot see any light. I have to kill my own near and dear one. How it is possible? So Sri Krishna mocked him. Ashotya ananya shochastam pragya vadanscha bharshe. That you are wailing for something, you are thinking for something which you should not think. Ashochan anya shochastam. And you are talking tall. You are giving lecture. The almost whole first chapter he gave a big lecture to Sri Krishna. Then he crumbled. Then he then explained what happens. That which is within us, he never dies. But he interacts with this world. One is matra and sparsha, sense and object of senses, various objects of senses. So this interaction gives us either pleasure or pain. Therefore, you have to come out of it. Why? Because something which you are, or which we think other people possess, that never dies. It decays. It is all pervading. Therefore, you should not worry about it. So he further explained that nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavaka, na chainam kledayantapo, na shoshayati maruta. You cannot cut it, you cannot soak it in water, or you cannot dry it in weather conditions. So this is within, and it never dies. Now, what is the basis of all this? He says that what exists never cease to exist, and what seemingly exists, that dies. So there is a shloka, Sat na sato vidyate bhava na bhava na asatah bhava vidyate. Whatever is non-existent never exists. Na sato vidyate bhava na bhava vidyate satah. And abhava, what is abhava never comes to existence. Whatever is sat, na asatah bhava vidyate bhava na abhava vidyate satah. And sat never ceases to exist. So this is simple fact. We all understand this. But somehow we mingle with something which is seemingly existing, and then we are confused. So therefore, this is to be get rid of. That requires time, that requires self-effort. So that happens in course of time. So what is the way then? Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. At the end of almost at the end of the Gita, Bhagavan says that if you can practice knowledge, it is good. If you can practice karma yoga, that is also good. Bhakti yoga or Raj yoga, all these are paths. But if you cannot do anything, at least surrender to me, leaving aside all your seeming existence. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. Aham tva sarva papebhya mokshayishyami ma shucha. Therefore, not to worry about. Because we can talk about, that knowledge, what knowledge portion says, what meditation portion says, what karma yoga says. But for us, we are simple being. If we can surrender our little ego, that comes in the way. Wherever there is a problem, know for certain this ego. Therefore, we are to surrender our ego to achieve that immortal self. We are immortal. Know for this. Know for certain. This is the fact that we are immortal. Nothing can obliterate us. As of now, we are in waking state. This seems real. But as we go to sleep, we forget it totally. We forget our riches, we forget our possessions, properties, relations, everything. Even we forget our identity with this. And then when we go to dreamless sleep, we forget even our dreams. Therefore, what is that? Angushta matra purusha. What is within us? That remains. That is immortal self. So this is to be inculcated. And all other seeming appearances will disappear one day. It is for certain. But we are to hold it, what is a real self. So this is what a sannyasin cultivates, and I'm sure Swami Atmajayananda also cultivated this. We are to cultivate this, our immortal self within.
Good morning. So the next series of talks we'll actually talk about more about Swamiji's life. So we coordinated among us, and what we did is that I would talk till 1980 of his life from our archives. And then, so this will, as I mentioned, his pre-monastic name was Harold Amundsen. Then his brahmacharya name was Brahmachari Shanti Chaitanya. And then eventually after sannyasa, he became Swami Atmajayananda. So after me, Susie will talk about the overall life story. Then Jane will take a deeper dive of his work in Scappoose. After that, Graza will share some memories with us, and then Thomas will talk about Karma Yoga. At the end, we have a special speaker from Seattle, Swami Abhikarananda or Ben Maharaj is going to share some more memories with us. With this, I begin. So Ramakrishna order monks usually have three stages after they decide to join as a monk. First, they join as a probationer. After that, they go to a training center and do a rigorous study of various scriptures, Ramakrishna, Vivekananda literature, Sanskrit classes, Karma Yoga, meditation. After that, they take the vow of Brahmacharya or novitiate vows, and then they get a name of Brahmachari something Chaitanya. After that, a few years after that, they take perpetual vows or sannyasa, and then they are reborn and renamed as Swami something Ananda. So Harold Amundsen actually joined Seattle Vedanta in 1968 under the then head Swami Vivideshananda, but he was very close to us and he kept on shuttling between these two centers. In 1975, he took his Brahmacharya vows in this temple itself. And then from 1993, he has been staying in Seattle fully. In 2000, he took his sannyasa. So this training center, he did not go to Bellarmine to attend. The training center happened here. So these are pictures from old days where you can see them sitting with Swami Asheshananda and Mr. Bush attending these classes. Now, what classes did they study? So when they appealed to Bellarmine, this is from Marvin Myers or Swami Harananda's writing, that they studied Bhagavad Gita, multiple Upanishads, Viveka Chudamani, Bhagavatam, Upadesha Sahasri, 4 yogas, complete works, Swami, then gospel, then Sri Ramakrishna's life. Well, they did projects with Swami Chaitanya. He was still doing it in 1974. And they worked on like Christ as Vivekananda and like topic on Christ by Vivekananda and many others. If you want to know the current one, ask Devishananda about the syllabus. Then they expressed their interest in Brahmacharya. We find these letters in our archives written by Marvin Myers on the left and Harold Amundsen at the time on the right. He says, see the first line, yes, I want Brahmacharya. Such a beautiful word. He says, I want to become established in constant remembrance of the Lord, so that someday, by the grace of Master and Mother, I will have intense yearning for God. Beautiful letter. I had the luck and opportunity of reading this. So then they appealed. Both of them wrote an appeal to the president of the order at that time, Swami Vireshwaranandaji, that they want to take Brahmacharya in United States. And Swami Asheshanandaji, along that, sent a letter to the Bellarmine headquarters, forming a committee for the Brahmacharya. So these were the committee members. Swami Vivideshananda of Seattle, Shraddhananda of Sacramento, Swami Swahananda of Berkeley, Swami Prabodhananda of San Francisco, Bhashyananda of Chicago, and Bhaskarananda of Seattle. Many monks at that time, senior monks in United States, sent recommendation letters to Bellarmine so that the Math authorities agree so that they can be given Brahmacharya here. So Swami Prabhupada, Satprakashananda, all of these people wrote letters. An example letter of Swami Shraddhananda's recommendation is here in this one. Bellarmine authorities in their board meeting, Board of Trustees meeting, March 26, 1975, agreed that they can be given Brahmacharya in the United States. This is a letter by Gambhiranandaji, who was the General Secretary at the time. He wrote and he gave the rules of Bellarmine that, which were formed in 1958, that there needs to be 4 people, one as the initiating preceptor, and there needs to be 3 other Swamis from the order who are in US to perform this ceremony. This rule is still valid. Swami Chandrasekharananda actually told me about this road last year during Guru Purnima. Many people couldn't attend. So Swami Vividishananda from Seattle, Swami Prabhupada, Swami Shatprakashananda, this is 1975. They were very ill. So due to physical illness, they could not travel. And due to some other engagements, Swami Pavitrananda and Radheshwarananda, both the New York Swamis, western side and eastern side, couldn't come. So the Brahmacharya mantras were sent here by Swami Prabodhananda. He actually knew them and he sent in letters it to us. Then these are the people, these are the preceptors. They had an event in Skapus. From left, Swami Swahananda, then Swami Bhashyananda, then Swami Asheshananda, Swami Yuktananda, who was a Belur Math trustee at that time. He was staying in San Francisco, he came. Swami Prabodhananda and Swami Bhaskarananda. Out of this list, today we only have with us Swami Bhaskarananda. This is a picture from him from late 70s. 14th May 1975, the day of Akshaya Tritiya, was the day of their Brahmacharya vows. Akshaya Tritiya means it's a very interesting day in Hindu tradition. It's believed what you do on that day will not decay. It will not erode. So it's a beautiful day, and that is the day they took their Brahmacharya vows. If you just walk out in the garden, you will see the Buddha shrine. This Buddha shrine was made by Jim Pryor. Eve is here today with us. And you can see in our pump house, intense woodwork is being going on by Marvin and Harold. This is the original drawing, architecture drawing of the Buddha shrine that we have in the garden. I took it from our archives, thanks to Kathy and Terence. And this was also, he took help from Brahmachari Shanti Chaitanya at the time. The Skapus work, Jane will go into details, but here are pictures of him working in the Vivekananda shrine in those days, you know, planting trees, as we see. This is very interesting. So you can see him talking to Brave Buffalo, who was the leader of the Sikangu Sioux people, native people in this area. And he discussed with them about the idea of making this shrine, which is so unique that we have in Skapus. This is the picture of the from our archives of the day of dedication. Many others were there. Ramakrishna shrine dedication, Buddha shrine. You can see him standing here. Swami Harananda at that time, Sharada Chaitanya standing here. Mr. Bush here. Eric Foster, who was also at that time living here as a probationer. His picture is also here. This is a picture from old days. Our men's Antar Yoga. And you can see him sitting here. Steve Shank is here from this picture. So there were many visitors at that time. You know, we have people from Australia, many have visited Fiji. So our Swami Rudrananda, who started the Fiji Center, he visited us. This is the picture with him. They went to Multnova Falls with Swami Bhashyananda. You can see him here. You know this man very well. This is the young Chaitanyananda from 1973. These pictures were taken by Shanti Chaitanya. They used to have a lot of fun. In those days, the Seattle and the Portland Vedanta centers, they used to go for picnic together. This is the picture of a picnic in Cannon Beach, Ecola State Park in 1977. You can see him standing here with Swami Asheshananda. If you want to know more, Devra from Seattle attended this picnic actually. She is here in the picture. Quite unrecognizable, but she was here, so maybe she can tell us more about what happened. Very fun fact, he was a fantastic Tanpura player. There are many pictures of him playing Tanpura. This letter is written in Bengali by Swami Bhaskarananda at the end of 1970s. This is where, this is written in Bengali, I read it. He is writing to Swami Asheshananda and inviting him to do more architectural work in Seattle. That is what actually took him there initially. And then eventually he stayed there. So during my initiation time in 2015, I asked my Gurudev, Swami Sarvadevananda of Hollywood, many questions. One such question was, what is the goal of monastic life? He told me that a monk's goal in life is God realization. But in Ramakrishna mission, there is a twist. Our motto is Atmana Mokshatam Jagat Hitayacha, which means for the salvation of the individual self, and for the well-being of all on earth. So well-being of others is also a part of our journey. We not only strive for our own salvation, but also augment that by trying to help others. He told me that human beings are helpless creatures. We do not choose where we are born, to whom we are born, in what situation we are born. But by the grace of Sri Ramakrishna, the power he gives in our hands, by that we can change our destiny and the destiny of people around us. Swami Vivekananda says in Bengali, জগতে যখন এসেছিস একটা দাগ কেটে যা. When you have come to this world, make a mark on it. I think Swami Atmajayananda, in his own way, succeeded. He made his mark. His work of architecture and woodwork in Skapus, he converted that forest, singing songs of the main philosophy of Sri Ramakrishna, harmony of faiths. He succeeded. So, and he is still there. As a Vedantin, death is just a phase change. It's just the point where the self gives away this cast of mortal body. He is there, inspiring that child, inspiring that father-daughter, inspiring those group of friends, right now hiking in Skapus, telling them, Ekam Sat Vipra Vahuda Vadanti. Truth is one, sages call it by various names. So, I do not want to say him goodbye, bid him farewell, or say rest in peace. I want to thank him for inspiring us for decades and for decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you. A few inches too short. It's fine. All right, so let us continue with our learning journey. I'm going to share with you some of Swami Atmajayananda's life. So Swami Atmajayananda, Harold Eugene Amundsen, affectionately known as Shanti, was the second child born to Roy and Hildur Amundsen on March 12, 1940 in Portland, Oregon. He graduated from Ulysses S. Grant High School in Portland in 1957, and during his senior year, he was the captain of the ski team. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, he was recognized in regional newspapers for his participation in various skiing championships, and in 1960 was chosen by the Pacific Northwestern Ski Association as one of 7 skiers to compete in the National Alpine Ski Championships. He attended the University of Oregon and then transferred to Oregon State University, where he earned a BA in architecture. In addition, he served in the Coast Guard, studied music, and played several different musical instruments, including the flute, enjoyed bicycling, and was an avid photographer. In 1961, while still a student of architecture at Oregon State, he designed and helped his grandfather build the parents' home in Gresham, Oregon. It was conceived in the style of Frank Lloyd Wright, and in 2019 was entered into the National Register of Historic Places. Swami Atmajayananda joined the Vedanta Society of Portland in February 1960 and was initiated, as we've learned, by Swami Aseshananda, the last direct disciple of Holy Mother Sri Sharda Devi. Sometime in the 60s, Swami Atmajayananda came to the Vedanta Society of Western Washington in Seattle to assist Swami Vivedishananda, who was by himself in the ashram. He was accepted as a probationer in the Ramakrishna order in 1968, fulfilling Swami Vivedishananda's lifelong dream of starting a monastery. In 1971, Jim Austin, later Swami Manishananda, joined the Vedanta Society in Seattle. This freed Swami Atmajayananda to return to the Portland Vedanta Center, and in May 1975, he took his brahmacharya vows there. In 1974, while in Portland, he designed and constructed 8 shrines at the Vedanta Society's retreat in Scappoose, Oregon. 3 of the shrines were dedicated to Sri Sharda Devi, Sri Ramakrishna, and Swami Vivekananda, while the 5 remaining shrines were dedicated to Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Islam, and the indigenous peoples. Around 1980, he was briefly loaned back to the Seattle Center to help in the architectural design of our proposed new building to be constructed on our newly acquired property located near the Northgate Shopping Center. He returned to Portland when this project could not be realized due to its high cost projections and neighborhood objections. Swami Atmajayananda moved back to the Seattle Vedanta Center in 1993. He would stay both at Tapovan, the Society's retreat, and in Seattle, dividing his week between them. The Vivekananda Assembly Hall was being built, and he helped lay the black granite tile in its main hall, as well as contributed to the maintenance and the construction of other structures. When staying at Tapovan, Swami Atmajayananda stayed in the original log cabin that was first built for holding monthly day-long retreats, which he kept well-maintained and upgraded over the years. In 2000, he went to Bulur Math in India, the headquarters of the Ramakrishna Math and Mission, to take his sannyasa vows. He was then given the name Swami Atmajayananda. When at the ashram in Seattle, he would be the doorman and the usher for the Sunday morning talks, unless he himself was giving the talk, a task that was assigned after sannyasa. He also regularly gave talks in Vancouver, British Columbia, at the Vivekananda Vedanta Society of British Columbia. He was very friendly, helpful, and a welcoming presence to all those attending services. Due to the advanced stage of his multiple myeloma, confirmed in April 2021, he declined treatment and chose to enter hospice to receive palliative care at the Vedanta Society's retreat property. By November 2022, it was evident that he required full-time care, and he was moved to the Seattle ashrama. After a long, heroic struggle spanning many years, he passed away on Tuesday evening at 6:30 p.m., January 3rd, 2023. May his soul rest in peace. Yeah, it'll be fun.
Good afternoon and welcome, brothers and sisters of the Portland Vedanta Society. The subject of my talk is transformation of a person, deification of life and works. As you've heard from Susie, in October of 1982, Swami Atmajayananda asserted that renunciation is not about running away from the world. It is a process of deification of the world. How does one go about that process? In a subsequent lecture about a year later, Swami Atmajayananda explained, quote, spiritualized day-to-day life, any work can be worship once one achieves deification of the world. The life of Swami Atmajayananda, referred to henceforth as Shanti, offers a prime example of this teaching. As you heard from Susie, Swami Atmajayananda, or Shanti, had many, many diverse skills and interests. He was a skilled photographer, a flautist, and I didn't know about his Indian string experience, so that's new to me. He was an accomplished architect and an intelligent reader of such German philosophers as Kant and Schopenhauer. Any one of us who's old enough to remember the School of Interreligious Understanding, where these philosophies were discussed by Stuart Bush and others, will remember that Shanti had a keen intellect and was ready to discuss these matters and compared the German philosophers to Vedanta, particularly Schopenhauer. Shanti took these worldly interests and proceeded to use them in service of the divine. The following is a visual journey of how this principle was exemplified in Shanti's life. You heard about the residence that Shanti designed and then helped build for his parents, which is now on the National Historic Register. This is a picture of that house. It remains there today. And this is what was said on the National Historic Register site. Built in 1961 near Powell Boulevard in Gresham, the Amundsen Denson house was designed by Harold for his parents, Roy and Hildur. Then a student at the University of Oregon, Harold incorporated many features of Frank Lloyd Wright's Usonian home designs, and you will see these same interests reflected in the shrines at the retreat. Since then, the home has seen remarkably little alteration, making it a great example of mid-century architectural design. From the time of receiving probationer status in 1968 until his brahmachari vows in 1975, Shanti turned his numerous skills towards an end which focused on expressing the divine of all spiritual paths. The first shrine to be designed and built was that for Holy Mother in 1974. And you'll notice the things in quotes actually are things that Shanti has said about his structures. He said that this structure was modeled after the lines of Bengali rural homes, like those in Jairambati. Sri Ramakrishna's sign, also designed and built in 1974. And this is a contemporary picture showing the shrine and its 5 sides. And in front of it, you'll see from the left, Shanti, and then Swami Vedarupananda, and then one of our Portland devotees, Peter Tano. Shanti said the shrine's 5 sides were designed to indicate the 5 sacred tree plantings in the meditation site at the Panchavati. The red border along the woodwork, you can see that there at the end of the woodwork. The red border suggests the unconventional nature of Sri Ramakrishna. He wasn't the typical monastic. He wore a red bordered cloth, and so that was included in the shrine as well. This is a really important picture. It was taken at the Ramakrishna shrine, and this was taken on the day that brahmachari vows were given to Shanti. And you can see from left that Shanti in the blue suit, and we believe it's Swami Atmajayananda that's being obscured by Shanti. And then next to him is Prabhudananda Swami, and then Swahananda Swami, Bhaskarananda Swami, Bhashyananda Swami, and the man with the long hair is unmistakable in any photograph. When pictures of Seshananda Swami were seen by the people at Bel Air Moth and so forth, they were astounded and said, "What is that on his head? Is it an animal?" He had really long, full gray hair and beautiful. The Christian shrine was the next in 1974. And what Shanti said about the Christian shrine, which was situated on a tall hill to suggest Calvary, the hike up Calvary, the design reflects European Gothic cathedral lines. The shrine was fashioned after simple geometry of the Stations of the Cross seen on European pilgrimage routes. So he combined all these different elements from his studies to commemorate and mimic Christian and European styles. The Jewish shrine, which has been recently rebuilt within the last decade by Thomas Lifshutz, was built originally in 1975. Shanti said the outer design reflects an abstract Star of David in 3 dimensions. The inner shrine contains the carved box symbolic of the sacred Ark of the Covenant. The Buddha shrine also built in 1975, is an interesting combination of Shanti's interests and his studies. He said its unique design is made of unusual, unconventional angles, proportions, and atypical structural ratios, symbolizing Buddhism's entry into the world as an unconventional reform movement. The non-parallel angles were purposely chosen, reflecting a home, it was in Tacoma, Washington, by Frank Lloyd Wright, called Ode to the Northwest. Both studies approached Zen-like qualities, asymmetrical on the outside and symmetrical on the inside. Very nice metaphor. The Vivekananda Shrine took 2 years, 1975 to 1976. And here you can see Shanti working a chainsaw with Sarda on the ladder. And we don't know who that gentleman is. Someone thought it was my husband, Terrence, because he used to look like that. Including the camera around the neck and the long hair and the whole thing. I know that wasn't him because he didn't meet me until 1976. Anyway, they had very primitive tools to work with pretty much. This was one of the only power tools they had, and it was, like a chainsaw. And they did mill all the lumber for all these shrines from the trees on the property. And some of the stones, for example, in the Vivekananda shrine at the base that made all of that Pat Harris's husband, Jim, was a group of men, helped bring them up from the creek down, the one that's now Little Ganga, yes, okay. So they made use of everything from the property. Oh, I forgot to tell you, and you probably already read it, that this Vivekananda shrine used an architectural model of the Orissa style. This was the style of architecture in about 14 to 1500 AD. And it would be analogous again to the Gothic style of Europe around the same time. The significance of the taller tower, the Shiva symbol, and the shorter tower, which is the Shakti portion, is that one works out one's karmas through the world to enter into the timeless. Beautiful symbology. The carved structure at the very top on the Vivekananda shrine, I don't know if you've all seen that and wondered, like, what is that? It is the representation of a amalaka fruit offered to Shiva, commonly offered to Shiva. The Islamic, now known as the Islamic Sufi shrine, was constructed in 1976. Here in a more contemporary photo, you can see that this, according to Shanti, that the dome on the shrine follows the lines of many of the mosques in the Middle East, the birthplace of Islam. Islam promotes 5 tenets, also known as the 5 pillars. And this is represented by the 5 physical columns in that shrine. If one is viewing the plaque, which reads, "None exists but God," he or she is facing the east towards Mecca. Lastly, we have the Native Peoples Shrine, which took from 1976 to 1977. And in this more contemporary photo, you can see again Swami Vedarupananda, Peter Tano, and Shanti standing so that you can observe the wings of the bird with the Native Peoples designs that were put on them, within the last decade. Here is a picture of the front, and Shanti's comment is, "The eagle was chosen from my research to be the most dominant, universal, and auspicious form of the great spirit of the Native people's traditions. The eagle has far-seeing nature, which I equate to discrimination, viveka." I'd like to conclude with a slide, this slide, and this is a photo that probably no one has seen. We received it, and my husband and I received it, and it represents all of Shanti's skills. He was a Swami, he was an architect, he was a builder, He did panoramic photography, where you weave together the images so you get a really big picture out of several different photos. And he was an intellectual. And I leave you with what Swami Atmajayananda, his Diksha Guru, said: spiritualized day-to-day life, any work can be worship when one achieves deification of the world. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
I bow in reverence to Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother Sri Sarada Devi. And I wish to thank Swami Chandrasekarananda for giving me the opportunity to share the memories of a very special person, apparently. I would like to begin with quoting a part of the last message left for us by late Swami Shantarupanandaji. Spiritual life is all that is. Oneness, all that is. Death is only end of the image. As I reflect on the word image, the name and form, the images, the impressions on the background screen of a oneness, that come and go. All this left is the memories, but sometimes it's more than just the memories. Sometimes they are impactful impressions that leave the lasting imprint on our heart and our mind. In 1974, I found Vedanta in this very center, knock on the door with my husband Alan at the very inappropriate hour. And I believe it was probationer Harold who opened the door. That's another story. The year of 1975, when Shanti got his brahmacharya, I also became initiated by Swami Atmajayanandaji. Shanti was always present here with being extremely cordial, always smiling, gracious, very helpful. His presence was very personality was his presence was very alive here. But he was also gone a lot, and we know why. He was at the Scapus creating and building shrines. Years later, he told me was that beloved Guru Atmajayanandaji said to him, "You want to be an architect? Go build a shrine." So he went to the forest and labored with brahmachari who became later on Swami Harananda to create all those beautiful shrines that Jane so beautifully explained to us, and we can really enjoy the size of it to the very day. It's such an incredible spiritual place, very meaningful to me for many reasons. And years later, no chronology here necessary, is that Shanti moved to Seattle, and coincidentally, we have moved to Seattle as well. And on different occasions, particularly Thanksgiving time, we would welcome monks to our home. And on his very first visit to our house at the time, Shanti walked in and I stood in the living room and looked at the wall in front of him. And he said, "You need the window here." And so we did put the window according to his very irregular shape that he drew on a piece of paper. And that window became incredible architectural element complementing the space. But more than that, it just brought light, which is so important in the Northwest. So it brought this beautiful light. That window later on became, for me, a symbol of a spiritual light shining through. Well, we know all of that. He was a multi-talented person, and he was meticulous about his work. His mind was always creating something. I believe that his last project was this beautiful Japanese style gate to the garden at the top of it. However, being a creative, artistic person, it was just a part of his being in this world. To me, he was incredibly committed, disciplined person, truly devoted to a spiritual seeking, and was reflected in his whole way of being. I enjoy so much having conversation with him, which always were on a philosophical and spiritual topics. And one of the, after he received his sannyasa, Swami Atmajayananda and I walked in a scapus on a path, and he shared with me a book that he told me he carried with him all the time, wherever he goes, and he reads over and over and again. And that book is Imitation of Christ. So it was very, very beautiful day. I will never forget. And last time I saw Swami Atmajayananda, that was last summer at the Tapovan. And I mentioned to him that how much I appreciate his recommendation and how much this book has meant to me as well. And he was very surprised. He acted very surprised, but then he was kind of thinking, and after giving a thought, he put the dedication in this book, and I want to share this with you. He was already in hospice, a person who was not well at the time, but he was very much alive and very animated, and especially on spiritual subjects, of course. So he wrote, "Please remember Thakur and Ma, along with the tending of this book. Accept my best wishes, Swami Atmajayananda. Always go deeper into the real, to the one. Please read." What I want to say is that Harold, Shanti, Swami Atmajayananda, he personified many ideals and thoughts that are included in this book, and he lived by them. And if you indulge me, I just like to read two that he underlined. First, keep peace with yourself, then you will be able to bring peace to others. And of course, there are many underlines, but there's another one also that struck me, especially the knowing how ill he was, and at the very end, how sick he was and suffering. And this quote is, "Now, all our peace in this miserable life is found in humbly enduring suffering rather than in being free from it. He who knows best how to suffer will enjoy the greater peace because he is the conqueror of himself, the master of the world, a friend of Christ, and the heir of heaven. Shanti was a peaceful man, and man who has endured, and one who have left lasting imprint on my mind and my heart. Thank you, Swami. And thank you so much for listening.
Don't bother, it's fine, I go like that. Perfect. You know, after all these speakers, the vibe is just amazing. You know, what this man brings forth and brings out of people. Quite amazing. And so, of course, everything that I thought of has been said at least once, probably twice. So I'll give it a shot and see how I do. Anyway, because I'll start with this. This is because this has already been said, but go on from there. This is about a Swami's his sort of attitude and his sort of his temperament as an architect, let's just say. But it says, so I thought I could do it without him. For architecture among all the arts is the one that most boldly tries to reproduce in its rhythm the order of the universe, which the ancients, the Greeks, called the cosmos. That is to say, ornate, meaning intricate shapes and complex patterns, since it is like a great animal on whom there shines the perfection and the proportions of all its members. And praise be our Creator, who, as the scriptures say, has described all things in number, weight, and measure. So, you know, an architect, that's their job. I've worked with many, many designers over my years in career as a contractor and a builder. And also Swami, you know, was a hands-on builder. So I mean, when he talked about something, he did all the work, which is unusual for architects, because they like to talk around and draw these things that nobody can build. The Swami drew things that couldn't be built, but he would build them somehow. He would work at it and work at it and work at it. And I just found that so delightful. I could just sit, I could just talk about stuff, and we talked about everything. And we talked about everything, digging ditches out in the yard here to complex structural patterns of things. And he'd always be way, way ahead of me, which I really appreciated. Let's see. The other thing that I want to talk about, so, you know, when I talk about him as an architect, and we think about all the work that he did, all the karma yoga, we'll call it that he did everywhere, just sort of naturally. But he was, you know, a master doing all of it. Just when he did karma yoga, it was just masterful. And he was just, that was his mind. He had the mind and just the mind of an architect. So everything he did had that kind of order, and, you know, everything had to be in the right place. And if it wasn't right, he'd make a point of it. And I think, you know, somebody mentioned about underlining. I don't know if it was true or not, but I could just see him, you know, here's the book. And by the way, he'd go over to a book and he'd underline it. And that's what you're supposed to read. It was order. It was going to be order. And at the same time, he kind of knew that he is particularly in the end, I think. But the interesting was that, and you see this at the retreat, that everything was supposed to be in order, to always be working towards things orderly. And the shrines, even the way they're set up, each one was placed in its right place and so on. But he also understood that there is also a science of chaos, which frustrated him, but he was going to get it. So he was able to mix chaos and order and somehow produce what was there, which of course is a paradox, which is of course impossible, but there it is. And at the retreat, there it is. So the main thrust of what I wanted to say is we have Swami's masterpiece. This has been said before, in my opinion. You know, all the guys, they write these books and they do all this. All that. Swami, probably wrote something here or there, but he made a masterpiece at the retreat. And we just see every day, week after week, hundreds of people come and just in awe of, and it's of those shrines, but it's not just the shrines. Swami, and I know this because I live there now and I have growing into it as I live there more, but Swami knew the ground. He lived there. He knew the way the shapes went up and down. He knew the neighbor's ground. He knew the ground of the whole city. He would talk about it just in one breath. He'd talk about when you drive up the driveway and then you get down this hill and you look over at this other valley over there, and he would just be seeing it all. His mind was able to capture all of that stuff. So we started with that, the ground, the dirt, and the trees, and the water, and all of that kind of integrated into it. Then he narrowed it down to where the shrine sat. And then it wasn't just where the shrine sat, it's how the shrine sat, where the sun goes. And he did this like that. His mind just worked like that. He saw it. That's the architect, the masterful architect that was in him and of him. And it's there. And then he would build a shrine and each but I mean, if there was a board that was, and I've talked to him about this in November, I think, before he went, he was so sick he had to go back. But we were talking every day for maybe 2 weeks about a repair on one of his shrines. And if there was just something a little bit off, he would mention it. Now, this was a shrine he built in 1970 something. And at one point I was talking about the way this board runs up the shrine, this Vivekananda shrine runs up and then it bends over, and it took him weeks to make this big giant board bend. And he said, yeah, that's 9 feet up. And at that 9 foot point, how does he remember that? 9 feet. So of course I went out with a tape measure. I measured it 9 feet, and it wasn't 9.5 feet or 9 feet 2 inches, 9 feet. This is after all these years. So he built things that were, let's see, I didn't know about that, but they were placed. There was the placement that I mentioned it. There was the orientation. There was a style. They were unique and durable, and that another contrast, another thing that he always seemed to fit in there, which is the reality that kind of all of life and everything we do is a paradox that can't be expressed. We just have to go with it or we struggle. Is that they are unique, totally unique, and yet there's a way in which they all conform with something greater. You feel there's this great conformity there, but they're not the same. He managed to do that, put that all together. He was really a master, and these shrines show that. And I'll just close with the way that he also, all these shrines got put in at different times, and he was just working it here and there. But in a way, our shrines are bookend. We have Ramakrishna at this end and Holy Mother at this end. I mean, you go all through these shrines, the 8 shrines, which have been talked about many times. And I hope if you haven't been there, even if you have come again, it's there, all the time. And you can walk through the whole thing and it's all bookend within that. And if you think about it, even the way it just feels as you take this walk, and the up and the down and the sideways, the way the wind blows and the shot throws through the trees and the roads and the built environment and the unbuilt environment, all of it was in his mind. He saw it all, and his masterpiece lives right there.
Hello, welcome all. A few comments about Shanti. I believe it was about mid-70s when I was first introduced to Vedanta, and of course then had opportunity to chat with Shanti. And so anyway, we would have walks around and talk about this or that. I learned a lot about polymer concrete, which, what is that? And so different combinations. And he was in his building mode, and materials and how to use them and so on and so forth. All new to me, but very interesting. And also, there's been reference made to music. At the time, we would talk about various things, both Western and Indian music. And I found it very interesting that he liked to play flute in particular. And that was his favorite, but it wasn't just the playing, but the making. He would make flutes out of, you name it, whatever it was. It could have been wood, it could have been a piece of bamboo, PVC pipe, a piece of copper pipe, you name it. He had it figured out, all the fingerings and so on and so forth, and then would like to play it, So anyway, unique individual, I must say. Thank you.
Swami Atmajayananda from Seattle is joining us from Seattle. Swami, start.
Shall I start? Okay. Well, first I would like to thank Swami Maharaj for inviting me to this to Shanti's memorial event. So thank you so much. And also good afternoon, friends. Many of the things that you have mentioned that I've heard are very characteristic of how he spent his last 2 years in Seattle. Once he received the information that he had less than 6 months to live. However, he did continue to live for almost 2 years since that prognosis. But what I would like to talk about is his fearlessness and how that sustained him during these last 2 years. Because when he received the prognosis, he was offered whether he would like to take extensive treatment or comfort care, and he decided to take comfort care. And once he got on hospice, all these nurses and different counselors got involved in his care. And he actually took great joy in talking to them, philosophy, religion, and expressing his own philosophical views and even the things that he lived by. And then they would report to us, give us an idea what his mental state was. And sure enough, in many cases, whatever he has studied or thought or learned through Vedanta only came to materialize in his thoughts and thinking of how he approached his own death. And he was meticulous in keeping his room clean, just as he would keep everything in order. Everything had its place on his desk. And as much as everything was in order, he had sticky notes all over the walls. And on those sticky notes would be affirmations of quotes out of scriptures. And often you would see the word soul written in capital letters, not just on one sticky note, but spread out throughout the wall, not just on vertical surfaces, but also on top of the tables, horizontal surfaces. You didn't quite know if you should put anything down on top of them or not, but that was the way he kept these ideas present in his view whenever he walked around the room. So he always had something around him to remind him that he was not the body suffering multiple myeloma, which on its own is considered one of the more painful types of cancer to suffer from. And even the doses of methadone and morphine that he was taking was considered a very low dose. So we suspect that he probably had also a quite high threshold for pain. And it wouldn't surprise me that much of that fearlessness that he developed over these years, some of it probably came from all his high jumping off ski slopes. So living that kind of a lifestyle, somewhat adventurous and daring. Also, and then entering monastic life, also a lifestyle of, I would say, so it could be a daring lifestyle in that sense. And living by, actually fearlessness was always, I know that a lot of people also feared him, but he also lived by that within himself, even to the point where throughout these 2 years of hospice care and meeting all the nurses and the caregivers, he never complained about his illness, nor even asked, why me? Why am I suffering? He accepted the suffering and he just lived life, I would say, heroically. And he had all these reminders, all these sticky notes around him reminding him. But then the last month of his life, when he actually came to Seattle, that's when I actually saw him more on a 24-hour schedule to see. And in many cases, in his case, he was actually the first person I actually had to witness following the whole process of dying. And also talk to him about it and try to get his feelings on it and to hear what his thoughts were. And it's some of those things that I want to talk about today, because even on his deathbed, he kept chanting the word soul. And when the caregivers would come, and in particular our spiritual counselor, who was himself a Korean-born, born-again Christian, but yet he had somewhat of an open mind. And Shanti would ask him what his thoughts were, what his beliefs were. So he still wanted to know what other people thought about death. And he would tell this counselor to remember that he's not the body, but that he's the soul, and to chant the word soul when he's driving home. So, and he was actually quite alert, surprisingly, through all of that, even though that somewhat the last 2 weeks kind of diminished. And more of, I would say, he was trying to conserve his energies at that point. But still, he would still struggle to do things on his own, regardless of it. He didn't want people doing things for him. Now, I don't know, some of you probably realize that he's a very hard worker, and much of his body became deformed because he worked to such a point where whatever pains he thought he was having, he thought were muscle aches, when in fact he was cracking his bones, and those bones would re-heal in a kind of contorted form. So he was somewhat hunchback and so forth, but he was also extremely skinny. And even the nurses were amazed to see how could a person whose legs looked as thin as just a bone, as just the bone, could get up to use the bathroom and walk around on his own. So he still had quite a strength of mind, even to those last, actually until 3 or 4 days before his passing, that he had to get up on his own but eventually did use a walker and so forth, but still, he did not like to live a life of dependency. And so he was sort of embarrassed that he was becoming a burden on us, but we did not look at it as a burden, because we also saw a certain sense of heroism. And And at some of his worst moments, I would say that we would have a picture of Holy Mother in front of him. And I would say, rather than just look at Holy Mother when you feel at your worst. And he would do that. He says, yes, you're right. And I would have him chanting his mantra, reminding him, because sometimes when you say that pain, sometimes it looks like he was forgetting. And then he'd say, yes, you're right. I will keep chanting. And he had sticky notes even in his room, soul. And that's what he wanted to talk about when we would drop in to visit. And when Swami Atmajayananda would drop in and remind him that he's a soul and that Thakur is a soul, all souls, Shanti was so happy to hear that and would reaffirm that, yes, you're right. So I just wanted to share some of those thoughts with you, that as also for us, examples of how we should approach death. So thank you all so much for listening.
Just now we have heard, he always thought about the self. Nityah sarvagatam sthanu acharoyam sanatana. It is eternal, it is all pervading, and it is within us. And this is achala, it cannot be moved, and it is eternal, all pervading. So knowing this, what we have to do? We have to excel in our duties as he did. Also, we all try to do. And that we have to offer to God. Why? To deify our day-to-day activities. Yat karoshi, yadashnashi, whatever you do, whatever you eat, yat juhoshi, whatever you offer, dadasi yat, and whatever you donate, tat kurushva, do all these, but offer that to me. Why? To achieve that fearlessness, abhaya pratishtha. So that is the theme of a life of a sannyasin. So that we have to inculcate in our lives. So anyway, thank you very much for coming this today and sharing your thoughts and also being with us. After this, we'll have a closing song, and then you all are invited to have potluck prasad, or it was offered to God. So the main thing is we have to divinize ourselves. Also, we have to offer through our day-to-day activities. And the obstruction is ego. That we have to find out the ways to remove that. So thank you very much. Your dream to be, it's slow, surely. Small beginnings, great eyes, heartfelt work grows purely. If you learn to live life free, take your time, go slowly. Few things, but do them well. Simple joys are home. Day by day, stone by stone, secrets slowly.
you to win, you scream. Slowly. But grows purely. Your dream to be so surely. Small beginnings, simple joys are holy. Day by day, stone by stone, secrets slowly. Day by day, you to win, you have scream.
Two announcements. One, we are going to celebrate Shivaratri on 18th. And this time, some enthusiast people, devotees, they want to do it the whole night. But we'll do as we do every year. We'll offer worship for four praharas, 4 time period in one go. And then they'll continue chanting, bhajan, etc. So that is on 18th. Then on 25th, we'll have the birth anniversary of Sri Ramakrishna. 25th of February. So you are all welcome to join us on 18th and 25th, and all other informations will be sent to you through our emails. Thank you very much. So let us chant Brahmarpanam also from here. Om Brahma 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 Hare Tassat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hare Om. Please come.